On the 2nd of July 1931, the 48-year-old German serial killer Peter Kürten was executed by Carl Gröpler in the Cologne prison Klingelpütz with a guillotine. Here we can see Kuerten, who had a sort of Hitler moustache even before Hitler made it popular. Alright, it doesn't quite look like Hitler's, but it's sort of similar. This man has been described as the Vampire of Düsseldorf or the Dusseldorf Ripper. At least 3 films have been made about him, the first of which was the 1931 Fritz Lang production M, which starred Peter Lorre, who was later to become famous starring in the Maltese Falcon and Casablanca. Obviously, Peter Lorre was fortunate enough to get himself out of Nazi Germany. Peter Kürten was not the world's first serial killer. He was, however, the first person to be called a serial killer. As far as I can tell, the term was coined because of his crimes. He owed his nickname, the Vampire of Düsseldorf, to his report that he'd killed a swan chick by cutting its neck and sucking the blood from its wound. According to the Kürten police files, he did the same thing to 2, possibly 3 human victims. It would seem that Kürten also gained sexual satisfaction from seeing the blood of his victims fall to the ground. At least that is what he told investigators after his arrest. He was arrested on the 24th of May 1930. He offered no resistance to the arrest. 2 surviving victims identified him in a lineup, whereupon Kürten made a full confession that same day. In addition to the crimes that could clearly be attributed to him, in his confession he also admitted killing 3 other people and attempting to kill 4 others in Altenburg, which later turned out to be false. He'd lived in Altenburg and Thuringia with his wife before moving back to Dusseldorf. Kürten retracted his confession in June 1930 and denied all the crimes resulting in death, but stood by his confessions to those crimes in which the victims had survived and also admitted to arson. He justified his earlier confession to his wife by saying that he wanted to help her get the reward offered for the capture of the murderer. After confronting other witnesses and finding items hidden from the murdered girls and some of the murder weapons, he returned in August 1930 to make a comprehensive confession to all of his crimes. The authorities attempted to understand the mind of a serial killer. Therefore, Kürten was sent to the Bedburg Provincial Hospital and Nursing Home for 8 weeks and examined by the director of the hospital, Reuter, and other doctors, who submitted over 1,000 pages of examination reports. The Bedburg hospital doctors and other Kürten hospital doctors who were consulted unanimously confirmed that there were no symptoms of any kind of mental illness. They confirmed that Kürten had sadistic tendencies and was fully responsible for his actions. The jury trial against Kürten began on the 13th of April 1931. The charges against Kürten were 9 murders and 7 violent robberies. The defense lawyer was Alex Werner from Dusseldorf. Kürten's questioning took place behind closed doors, but members of the press were allowed to attend. Kürten repeated his confession in court. His lawyer pointed out that the defendant had grown up in a difficult age, but also admitted that Kürten had dug his own grave with his actions. In his closing statement, Kürten tried to place some of the blame on his victims, saying that they had made it very easy for him, but also admitted that he could not escape the death penalty, and he asked the victims' relatives for forgiveness. On the 22nd of April 1931, the Dusseldorf jury sentenced him to death for 9 counts of murder, as well as to 15 years in prison for the 7 attempted murders. An alleged killing of 2 boys in Mulheim in 1893, to which Kürten had also confessed, was dismissed as there was now lack of evidence. While Kuerten had clearly enjoyed the preliminary investigation and the trial, as there was great interest in him, he was upset after the verdict was announced as interest in him passed. He was now a normal prisoner, and it was as though no one paid any more attention to him. He had his lawyer submit a petition for clemency. Meanwhile, the guillotine that was sent from Magdeburg had not been used for 5 years, and so might not have been in the best condition. It had to be transported in sections, and the executioner Carl Gröpler had to put it together. International interest in the case was such that even Time reported on it. The following is a direct quotation from the issue of Time for the 13th of July 1931. Herr Gröpler, a stolid individual whose profession forces him to lead a rather unsocial existence, left his cosy home in Magdeburg last week with a bag of tools and a coil of new rope. He took the train to the Prussian state prison at Klingelpütz near Cologne. In the prison yard he disappeared into a dusty, dilapidated shed. Prisoners, tense in their cells, heard him hammering, filing metal all day long. The Prussian government rejected Kuerten's request for clemency on the 30th of June. On the 1st of July, Kuerten was transferred to the Klingelpütz prison in Cologne's Altstadt Nord district. There he was informed in the afternoon that his request for clemency had been rejected, and that he would be executed the following morning. Kuerten remained composed upon receiving the news, and he asked permission to see his confessor, whereupon the prison's pastor was assigned to him, and that evening his priest from Dusseldorf arrived in Cologne. He also asked to write letters of apology to the relatives of his victims, and a final farewell letter to his wife. All of these requests were granted. On the evening of the 1st of July 1931, Kuerten received his final meal. He ordered Wiener Schnitzel, a bottle of white wine, and fried potatoes. Kuerten ate the entire meal and then requested a second helping. The prison staff once more granted his request. He spent the night sleepless in the company of the clergy and his lawyer, and wrote letters to his wife, to surviving victims of his crimes, and to his relatives. At 5 in the morning he attended a mass that was read for him. Just under 1 hour later he was taken to the guillotine. He walked unassisted, flanked by the prison psychiatrist and a priest. Shortly before his head was placed on the guillotine, Kuerten turned to the prison psychiatrist and asked a question. "Tell me, after my head is chopped off, will I still be able to hear, at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures." When asked if he had any last words to say, Kuerten simply smiled and replied, "No." At 0600, his head was chopped off. Despite all the secrecy, a group of reporters gathered in front of the Klingelpütz prison before the execution. They were not allowed to see the execution, but a justice spokesperson informed them of what had happened. Kuerten's execution received a unanimously positive response in the press. Kuerten's body was handed over to some doctors present for examination and to take specimens. Amongst other things, the scientists also examined the brain for abnormal changes. The body was buried without its head. The mummified head was brought to the United States after World War II and is now on display as an exhibit in the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin. During the Weimar Republic there were not many executions. This was to change once Hitler took power and the number of death penalty offences increased dramatically. If you'd like to see a longer video on the execution Carl Gröpler, who carried out many of these executions despite his advanced age, then click on the link which will soon appear, if it has not done so already. If you're interested to know more about the death penalty in Nazi Germany, then subscribe to my channel. For the moment, thanks for listening.